They didn't ignore you because they didn't hear you. They ignored you because they didn't fear losing you. And that's the truth no one will ever tell you to your face. You've been trained your entire life to believe that respect comes from being louder, from forcing your presence into every room, from demanding attention like a child begging for validation. But the men who command respect never raise their voices. They don't need to, because they understand something you've been blind to. Respect is not given to those who demand it. It's surrendered to those who withdraw it. You walk into rooms and feel invisible. You speak and watch people's eyes drift past you like your background noise. You've convinced yourself it's about confidence, about charisma, about saying the right things at the right time. So you try harder, you talk more, you laugh louder, you chase approval like it's oxygen. And with every word, every desperate attempt to be seen, you lose more ground, because you're playing a game you were never taught the rules to. And the people who control you, they know exactly what they're doing. They've turned you into a reactor, someone who responds, who explains, who justifies, who defends. And reactors are never respected. They're managed, they're used, they're the supporting cast in someone else's story. You think you're building relationships, but you're building dependencies. You think you're being kind, but you're being weak. And deep down, in the part of your mind you refuse to look at, you know it. You feel it every time someone talks over you and doesn't apologize. Every time your opinions are dismissed without a second thought. Every time you're the last person consulted and the first person forgotten. This isn't about being mean. This isn't about being cold. This is about understanding the psychology of power. Because power is not something you take. It's something people give you when they realize you don't need them. And the moment you stop needing validation, approval, or permission from anyone, you become dangerous. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're unavailable. And unavailability is the rarest, most magnetic force in human psychology. You've been operating on the wrong frequency your entire life. You've been taught that connection is closeness, that respect is warmth, that influence is volume. But the people who control rooms, who shift energy with a glance, who command attention without saying a word, they know the opposite is true. Distance creates value. Silence creates weight. Mystery creates obsession. And the moment you master these principles, you stop being someone people walk over. You become someone people calculate around. This video is not for everyone. If you're still addicted to being liked, if you still need people to validate your existence, if you still measure your worth by how many people smile when you enter a room, this will feel like poison. Because what I'm about to show you dismantles everything you've been told about influence, respect, and power. These aren't tricks. These aren't hacks. These are the psychological laws that govern human hierarchies. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. Once you apply them, you can't go back. So, if you're ready to stop being a passenger in your own life, if you're ready to understand why people treat you the way they do, if you're ready to command respect without begging for it, then keep watching. Because the rules I'm about to give you will change the way you move through the world, and the people around you will feel the shift before they understand it. Let's begin. Rule number 1. Never explain yourself twice. The moment you repeat yourself, you admit you're powerless. Explanation is the language of the subordinate. When you justify your decisions, your boundaries, your choices more than once, you're not clarifying, you're negotiating your own authority. And the person listening hears only one thing. This person doesn't believe in what they're saying. They hear weakness. They hear flexibility. They hear an opening. People don't respect what you say. They respect what you're willing to walk away from. If you set a boundary and someone tests it, your response determines everything. Most people fold. They re-explain. They soften their tone. They add context. They negotiate themselves into irrelevance. And the person testing them, they just learn they can push further next time. Because boundaries without consequences are suggestions, and suggestions are not respected, they're ignored. Think about the last time someone kept asking you the same question after you already answered. Maybe a co-worker pushed you to stay late when you already said no. Maybe a friend asking you to lend them money after you declined. Maybe a partner questioning your choice after you made it clear. What did you do? If you explained again, if you justified again, if you softened your position to make them comfortable, you lost. Not because you're a bad person, but because you signaled that your words are negotiable. This is how people lose respect without realizing it. They think they're being patient, they think they're being understanding, but they're training others to disregard them. Because every time you re-explain, you teach people that your first answer doesn't matter. You teach them that persistence works on you. You teach them that you're afraid of conflict, afraid of being disliked, afraid of standing alone. And the moment people sense that fear, they stop respecting your words. They start managing you. Machiavelli said it plainly. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel. People don't analyze your reasons, they feel your energy. And when your energy shifts every time you're challenged, they feel weakness, they feel uncertainty, they feel something they can exploit. So they keep testing, keep pushing, keep asking, because they know you'll fold. The fix is surgical. Say it once. Mean it completely. And when they push, don't re-explain. Let silence do the work. Let your unwillingness to repeat yourself communicate what words never could. I don't need you to understand. I need you to comply. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. That's respect. Because respect is not agreeing with you. Respect is accepting that your position is final, whether they like it or not. If this hits you, type, I see the truth. Rule number 2. Speak less than everyone else in the room. The loudest voice in the room is never the most powerful. It's the most desperate. People who talk constantly are not confident, they're terrified of silence. They're terrified that if they stop performing, stop filling every gap, stop broadcasting their thoughts, they'll disappear. And that fear is palpable. It leaks into every word, every forced laugh, every interruption. And the people around them feel it. They feel the neediness, they feel insecure, and they adjust their respect accordingly. Power doesn't announce itself. Power waits, because the person who speaks last controls the frame. They hear everyone's position, everyone's weakness, everyone's desperation, and then they respond with precision, not volume, not length, precision. A single sentence that cuts through 10 minutes of noise. A single observation that reframes the entire conversation. That's the influence, that's the command. And it only works if you've been silent long enough to see what others can't. Think about the last meeting you were in, the last group conversation, the last argument. Who talked the most? And who did people actually listen to? They're rarely the same person. The person who talks the most is exhausting. They're background noise. People tune them out while pretending to listen. But the person who's been quiet? The moment they speak, the room shifts, eyes turn, posture changes, because scarcity creates value, and if your words are rare, they become precious. This is a law of human psychology most people never learn. Availability destroys value. The more you talk, the less your words mean. The more you share, the less people care. You think you're connecting, but you're becoming predictable. You think you're contributing, but you're becoming ignorable. And the worst part? You don't realize it until it's too late. Until you're the person people interrupt without hesitation. Until you're the person no one asks for input because they assume they already know what you'll say. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. It forces other people to fill the void, to reveal themselves, to expose their motives. And while they're talking, you're learning, you're watching, you're calculating, you're collecting information they don't even realize they're giving you. And when you finally speak, you don't just respond, you dominate, because you've seen the entire board while they were staring at one piece. Machiavelli understood this. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. But the method for estimating your intelligence, watch how much you talk compared to how much you learn. If you're doing all the talking, you're learning nothing. You're performing, you're entertaining, you're bleeding value with every word. But if you're listening, observing, waiting, you're collecting power. Cut your words in half, starting today. In meetings, say one thing instead of 5. In conversations, ask questions instead of giving answers. In arguments, let the other person exhaust themselves while you stay calm, and watch what happens. Watch how people start leaning in when you speak. Watch how your words start carrying weight they never did before. Watch how respect shifts towards silence. If this is hitting, type, "I'm done explaining." Rule number 3. Never react immediately to disrespect. The person who reacts first loses, because reaction is proof of emotional investment, and emotional investment is proof of weakness. When someone disrespects you and you snap back instantly, you're not defending yourself, you're revealing that they have access to your emotions. You're showing them exactly which buttons to press. You're handing them the remote control to your internal state. And they will press those buttons again and again because it works. Respect is not won in the moment of conflict, it won in the hours after. The person who stays calm while being attacked, who lets the insult hang in the air without flinching, who responds with cold precision instead of hot emotion, that person is dangerous. Because they're not controlled by their feelings, they're controlled by their strategy. And strategy always beats emotion. Think about the last time someone said something to provoke you. Maybe they questioned your competence in front of others. Maybe they mocked something you care about. Maybe they dismissed you with a tone that made your blood boil. What did you do? If you fired back immediately, if you defended yourself, if you justify your position with anger in your voice, you lost. Not because you were wrong, but because you proved they could control you. You proved that your emotions are accessible. You proved that you're reactive, not strategic. This is the trap most people never escape. They think defending themselves in real time is strength, but it's the opposite. It's a leash. Every time you react immediately, you train people that disrespect works. You train them that pushing your buttons gets results. You train them that you're emotionally predictable. And predictable people are not respected. They're managed, they're playing, they're controlled. The alternative is terrifying for most people because it requires something they don't have: emotional discipline. When someone disrespects you, you pause. You let the silence stretch. You let them sit in the discomfort of what they just said. You let everyone watching feel the tension. And then, when you respond, you don't match their energy. You lower yours. You respond with cold clarity, with observation, not emotion, with a single sentence that exposes exactly what they just tried to do. Machiavelli said, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception." But here's the deeper principle. Never attempt to win by emotion what can be won by patience. Because the person who waits controls the outcome. The person who reacts is controlled by the outcome. And control is the only currency that matters. Here's what you do instead. When someone disrespects you, file it. Remember it. Don't react. Don't defend. Don't engage emotionally. Just observe. Let them think it worked. Let them think you're soft. Let them think they got away with it. And then, when the moment is right, when it benefits you, not them, you respond. Not with anger, with consequence, with distance, with a decision they never saw coming. That's power. That's respect. That's how you teach people that disrespecting you has a cost they can't predict. If this rule cracked something open, type, "I'm learning the game." Rule number 4. Make your presence optional, never guaranteed. The fastest way to lose respect is to always be available. Not sometimes, always. When people know you'll always answer, always show up, always say yes, they stop valuing your time. They stop considering your needs. They stop respecting your boundaries. Because you've taught them that you have none. You've taught them that your time, your energy, your presence is unlimited. And unlimited resources are never valued. They're exploited. This is the paradox no one tells you. The more you give, the less you're appreciated. Because human psychology doesn't value abundance. It values scarcity. It values uncertainty. It values the fear of loss. When people aren't sure if you'll be there, they treat you differently. They consider you before they act. They weigh their words before they speak. They calculate whether they've earned your time, and that calculation is respect. Think about the people in your life who get the most respect. Are they the ones who are always available, who always picks up the phone, always says yes, always bend their schedule to accommodate everyone else? No, they're the people who are selective, the people who have boundaries that actually mean something, the people who make others work to access them, not because they're arrogant, but because they understand a fundamental truth. Access is currency, and if you give it away for free, it becomes worthless. You've been conditioned to believe that being a good person means being available. That being reliable means always showing up. That being kind means never saying no. But that's not kindness. That's self-abandonment. That's training people to disrespect your time because you don't respect it yourself. Every time you cancel your plans to accommodate someone else's last-minute request, every time you drop everything because someone needs you, every time you prioritize their emergency over your own peace, you're teaching them that your life is less important than theirs. And they believe you. The shift is simple but brutal. Start saying no without explanation. Start being unavailable without apology. Start disappearing without warning. Not to punish anyone, but to recalibrate your value. Because the moment people realize you're not guaranteed, they start treating you like you're valuable. They start respecting your time because they're no longer sure they'll get it. They start appreciating your presence because it's no longer automatic. Machiavelli knew this. Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. The deception here is not malicious. It's strategic. You're not lying. You're just no longer advertising your availability. You're no longer signaling that your time is cheap. You're making people wonder, and wonder creates value. This doesn't mean disappearing from people's lives. It means making your presence a choice, not a given. It means letting people miss you. It means creating space where there used to be suffocation. Because when people have to work to access you, they respect what they fought for. When they get you by default, they take you for granted. If this rewired something, type scarcity is power. Rule number 5. Never defend your decisions to people who don't live with the consequences. Everyone has an opinion about how you should live your life, and none of them will. Be there when those opinions destroy you. They'll tell you to take the safe job, to stay in the comfortable relationship, to play it small, to wait for permission, to follow the rules. And when you do, when you sacrifice your potential on the altar of their comfort, they'll move on. They'll forget the advice they gave you. They'll forget they ever had an opinion. But you'll be stuck living the life they prescribed, wondering why you feel dead inside. This is the hidden tax of seeking approval. You pay with your life. Every time you let someone else's comfort dictate your choices, You trade a piece of your autonomy for their temporary validation, and that validation is worthless, because the people giving it aren't the ones waking up in your life. They're not the ones feeling your regret, your frustration, your suffocation. They're spectators offering commentary from the safety of the sidelines, and spectators don't get a vote. Think about the last major decision you made. How many people questioned it? How many people offered unsolicited advice, warnings, doubts? And how many of those people are actually living a life you admire? How many of them have taken the risks they're warning you against? How many of them have built something worth respecting? Most of them haven't. They're projecting their fears onto your potential. They're trying to keep you small because your expansion threatens their comfort. And if you listen to them, you'll spend your entire life managing other people's anxieties instead of building your own vision. This is why defending your decisions is always a losing game, because you're not actually defending your logic. You're asking for permission. You're seeking validation. You're hoping they'll approve so you can feel confident. But their approval will never make you confident. It'll just make you dependent. Dependent on their validation, their acceptance, their comfort. And the moment you stop doing what they want, that validation disappears. Here's the truth no one prepared you for. The people who criticize your decisions are not qualified to evaluate them. They don't have your vision. They don't have your risk tolerance. They don't have your hunger. They don't have your life. So why are you letting them vote on it? Why are you explaining yourself to people who will never understand because they've never tried? Why are you dimming your light to make people in the dark more comfortable? Machiavelli said it directly. Before all else, be armed. But the armor you need isn't physical, it's psychological. You need to armor yourself against the opinions of people who are not in the arena. You need to stop justifying your choices to people who will never take the journey you're on. You need to make decisions based on your vision, not their fear. And you need to do it without apology. The next time someone questions your path, don't defend it. Don't explain. Don't try to make them understand. Just say, I appreciate your concern, and move on. Let them sit with their confusion. Let them deal with their discomfort. Because their feelings about your life are not your responsibility. Your life is. And you'll never build the life you're capable of if you're constantly stopping to explain yourself to people who aren't even on the same road. If this landed, type, my life is not a democracy. Rule number 6. Withdraw attention before people expect it. Attention is the most valuable resource you control. And most people give it away like it's infinite. They pour attention into people who don't reciprocate, situations that don't serve them, conversations that drain their energy. And they wonder why they feel exhausted, invisible, disrespected. It's because they've made their attention worthless by making it constant. They've removed the one thing that makes attention powerful, the threat of its absence. People only value what they're afraid to lose, not what they already have, not what they're confident they can keep. The fear of loss, that's the trigger. That's what creates urgency, appreciation, respect. When someone knows you'll always be there, always listen, always care, they stop trying. They stop reciprocating. They stop considering your needs. Because they've learned that neglecting you has no consequence. Your attention is guaranteed, and guaranteed attention is ignored attention. This is why the most respected people in any room are the ones who leave first. Not because they're rude, but because they understand that staying too long makes you furniture. You become part of the environment, part of the background, and backgrounds are never valued, they're assumed. So the people who command respect, they engage powerfully, they add value quickly, and they leave while people still want more. They withdraw attention before it's expected, and that withdrawal creates hunger. Think about your relationships, the friendships, the romantic connections, the professional dynamics. Which ones feel balanced? Which ones feel like you're constantly giving while they're casually taking? Those aren't relationships, those are donor-recipient arrangements. And you're the donor. You're the one showing up, checking in, making effort, initiating. And they're the one showing up when it's convenient, when they need something, when they're bored. And you let it happen because you're afraid that if you pull back, you'll lose them. But here's what you're not seeing. You've already lost them. They're not present. They're not invested. They're just comfortable. Comfortable with your availability, your predictability, your unwillingness to disrupt the dynamic. And comfort is the death of respect. Because respect requires tension. It requires uncertainty. It requires the possibility that if someone doesn't value you, they'll lose access to you. Machiavelli observed, "Entrepreneurs are simply those who understand that there is little difference between obstacle and opportunity and are able to turn both to their advantage." The obstacle here is the imbalanced relationship. The opportunity is your withdrawal, because the moment you pull back, you create a vacuum, and vacuums force people to make a choice, step up or step out, and both outcomes serve you. Either they realize your value and adjust their behavior, or they disappear and you reclaim your energy. Here's how you apply this. Identify the relationships where you're overgiving, where you're always the one reaching out, always the one making plans, always the one caring more. And stop. Not forever. Just stop being the initiator. Stop being the one who fills the silence. Let them feel your absence. Let them wonder where you went. Let them experience what life feels like without your constant attention. And then watch what happens. Some will step up. Some will disappear. And both are wins. Because you'll finally know who values you and who was just using you. If you feel this, type, "I'm taking my energy back." Rule number 7. Never compete where you're not respected. If you have to fight for a seat at the table, you're at the wrong table. This is the hardest lesson for high-achieving people to accept because they've been conditioned to fight, to prove, to earn, to work twice as hard for half the recognition. And they do it. They exhaust themselves competing in arenas where they're tolerated, not celebrated, where they're useful, not valued, where they're judged by a standard they'll never meet because the game was rigged from the start. Competing for respect is announcing that you don't have it, because respect is not earned through performance. It's given or withheld based on perception. And if the people around you have already decided you're beneath them, nothing you do will change their minds. Not your results, not your effort, not your excellence. Because they're not evaluating your work, they're protecting their hierarchy, and you're a threat to it. So they'll move the goalposts, rewrite the rules, and gaslight you into thinking you're not good enough. And if you stay, if you keep competing, you're validating their assessment. The people who command respect don't compete. They select. They choose environments where their value is obvious, where their presence is desired, where they don't have to audition for a role they're overqualified for. And when they encounter resistance, when they sense disrespect, when they realize they're not valued, they don't fight. They leave, quietly, decisively, without explanation, because they understand that their energy is finite and their time is irreplaceable. And wasting either on people who don't respect them is self-sabotage. Think about where you're currently competing, the job where you're overlooked despite delivering results, the relationship where you're constantly proving your worth, the social circle where you're included but never prioritized. These aren't opportunities, these are traps. They're environments designed to extract your value while denying you respect. And the longer you stay, the more you reinforce the dynamic. Because by staying, you're agreeing to it. You're saying, "I accept being disrespected as long as I'm allowed to participate." That's not resilience. That's self-destruction. Machiavelli wrote, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. But here's the unspoken corollary. He who commands knows when to walk away. Because command is not about forcing compliance. It's about occupying spaces where your leadership is natural, where your value is undeniable, where respect is the default, not the exception. And if you're in a space where you're constantly proving yourself, you're not commanding, you're auditioning. And auditions are for beginners, not masters. The move is brutal but liberating. Stop competing. Stop trying to change minds that are already made up. Stop sacrificing your dignity for acceptance in rooms that will never truly accept you. Instead, find the rooms where you're wanted. Build the rooms where you're irreplaceable. Create the tables where you're not fighting for a seat, you're deciding who sits. That's power. That's respect. And it only happens when you're willing to leave places that don't serve you. If this one hurts, type, "I'm building my own table." Rule number 8. Use silence to make people reveal themselves. Most people are terrified of silence, so they fill it with explanations, justifications, confessions, apologies, anything to escape the discomfort. And when they fill it, they expose themselves. They reveal their insecurities, their motives, their lies. They hand you information they never intended to give. And they do it voluntarily because the pressure of silence is unbearable. But only for them, not for you. Because you understand that silence is not awkwardness, it's a weapon. When you master silence, you master interrogation without asking a single question. You create a vacuum that others feel compelled to fill. And in their desperation to fill it, they tell you exactly who they are. The person who immediately apologizes is insecure. The person who gets defensive is hiding something. The person who keeps talking is lying. And you didn't have to do anything. You just had to wait. You just had to be comfortable in the discomfort they created. This works in every context. In negotiations, silence after you state your price makes the other person negotiate against themselves. In confrontations, silence after an accusation forces the guilty to confess. In conversations, silence after someone speaks makes them elaborate, over-explain, and eventually contradict themselves. Silence is pressure, and pressure reveals the truth. But most people never use it because they're too busy filling the gaps themselves. Think about the last time someone lied to you. Did they stop after the lie? Or did they keep talking, adding details, explaining things you didn't ask about, volunteering information that made the lie more obvious? That's what liars do. They can't handle silence because silence feels like scrutiny, so they talk and talk and talk. And the more they talk, the more they expose themselves. But you have to let them. You have to resist the urge to interrupt, to agree, to fill the space. You have to sit in the silence and let them drown in it. This is also how you test loyalty, interest, investment. When you stop initiating, when you stop reaching out, when you create silence where there used to be noise, you find out who actually cares. The people who value you will break the silence. They'll reach out. They'll check in. They'll notice you're gone and come looking. But the people who don't, they'll let the silence stretch forever. And that's your answer. That's the truth you needed, but were afraid to face. Silence doesn't create distance. It reveals distance that already existed. Machiavelli understood power dynamics. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Silence is the fox. It's the trap you set that others walk into willingly. It's the test that exposes who's real and who's performing. And once you see the truth, you can act accordingly. Not emotionally, strategically. Start using silence intentionally. In your next conversation, when someone finishes speaking, don't respond immediately. Let 3 seconds pass. Watch what they do. Watch them squirm. Watch them add more. Watch them expose themselves. In your next disagreement, after you state your position, go silent. Don't defend. Don't elaborate. Just wait and watch them argue against themselves. In your next negotiation, after you make your offer, say nothing. Let them sit with it. Let them feel the pressure and watch them break before you do. If this shifts your thinking, type silence is violence. Rule number 9. Respect yourself more than you want to be liked. This is the rule that separates men from boys, because boys need to be liked. They need approval, validation, and inclusion. They'll compromise their boundaries, abandon their standards, betray their values, all to avoid rejection. They'll tolerate disrespect, accept mediocrity, and shrink themselves into shapes that fit other people's comfort. And they'll call it being kind, being flexible, being mature. But it's not. It's cowardice. It's self-abandonment disguised as social intelligence. Men who command respect don't need to be liked. They need to respect themselves. And they protect that self-respect with ruthless boundaries. They don't tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. They don't accept less than they deserve to keep the peace. They don't dim their light to make insecure people comfortable, because they understand that being liked by people who don't respect you is worthless. It's conditional. It's transactional. It's based on you staying small. And the moment you grow, the moment you set boundaries, the moment you choose yourself, it disappears. The painful truth is this: you cannot be respected and desperate to be liked at the same time. These are opposing forces. Respect comes from boundaries. Being liked comes from flexibility. Respect comes from self-priority. Being liked comes from other priority. Respect comes from saying no. Being liked comes from saying yes. And every time you choose being liked over self-respect, you lose both. Because people don't actually like people pleasers. They use them. They tolerate them. They keep them around because they're convenient. But they don't respect them. And without respect, there's no real relationship, just utility. Think about the people you respect most in your life. Are they the ones who always agree with you? Who never challenges you? Who bend themselves into pretzels to accommodate you? No. They're the people who have standards, who set boundaries, who will walk away if you violate their values. You respect them because they respect themselves, because they've demonstrated that their self-respect is non-negotiable. And that demonstration is magnetic. It's rare. It's powerful. Now think about how you've been operating. How many times have you said yes when you meant no? How many times have you accepted behavior you knew was unacceptable? How many times have you swallowed your truth to avoid making someone uncomfortable? Every time you did that, you chose being liked over self-respect. And every time you made that choice, you taught people that your respect for yourself is negotiable. And if you don't respect yourself, why should they? Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But the real principle is deeper. It is better to respect yourself than to be validated by others, because self-respect cannot be taken from you. Other people's opinions of you will shift with their moods, their agendas, their insecurities. But your respect for yourself, that's yours. That's the foundation everything else is built on. And when that foundation is solid, other people's approval becomes irrelevant. Not because you don't care about people, but because you're no longer willing to sacrifice yourself for their comfort. The shift is immediate. Start saying no without guilt. Start walking away from disrespect without explanation. Start choosing yourself even when it disappoints others. Not because you're selfish, but because you're done being available to people who don't value you. You're done tolerating behavior you'd never accept from yourself. You're done trading your dignity for inclusion. And the moment you make that shift, everything changes. Some people will leave. Good. They were only there because you were easy to control. But the people who stay, they'll respect you in a way they never did before. Because respect always follows self-respect. If this one broke something open, type, "I choose me." Rule number 10. Never let people see you need them more than they need you. Desperation is a stench people can smell from across the room. And the moment they smell it, you lose. Not because you're weak, but because you've revealed your hand. You've shown them that you need them more than they need you. And in any relationship, professional, romantic, social, the person who needs less controls everything. They set the terms, they dictate the pace, they decide the value. And the person who needs more, they accept whatever they're given and call it generosity. This is the dynamic that destroys respect faster than anything else. Because need creates imbalance, and imbalance creates hierarchy. And in that hierarchy, the person who needs less is at the top, not because they're better, but because they have options, because they've demonstrated that their life continues with or without the other person. And that demonstration, that indifference to outcome, is the most powerful negotiating position you can have. Most people sabotage themselves here without realizing it. They over-communicate, they over-pursue, they over-invest. They make their interest obvious, their availability constant, their need transparent, and they think they're building connections. But they're building dependency. They're training the other person to take them for granted. Because when someone knows you'll always be there, always care, always try, they stop trying. They stop reciprocating. They stop valuing. Because you've removed all risk. You've made yourself a guarantee. And guarantees are never appreciated. Think about the relationships where you feel most respected. Are they the ones where you're chasing, proving, convincing? Or are they the ones where both people are equally invested, equally uncertain, equally aware that the relationship could end if either person stops showing up? It's the latter, because uncertainty creates value, it creates effort, it creates respect. When both people know they could lose each other, they treat each other carefully. But when one person is certain the other will never leave, they stop being careful. They stop being considerate. They start being entitled. The fix requires emotional discipline most people don't have. You have to hide your need, not because you're playing games, but because revealing need before it's mutual is strategic suicide. You have to act like you have options even when you don't. You have to walk away from situations that don't serve you, even when you want them to work. You have to value your own presence more than anyone else's, not arrogance, strategy. Because the moment people sense you need them more than they need you, they own you. Machiavelli was explicit. Never was anything great achieved without danger. And the greatest danger in relationships is making yourself too available, too certain, too safe. Because safety breeds complacency, and complacency breeds disrespect. The people who command respect are the people who are always a little bit dangerous. Not because they're mean, but because they're unpredictable, because they might leave, because their presence is a choice, not a given. And that choice keeps people engaged, attentive, and respectful. So, here's what you do. Stop reaching out first all the time. Stop being the one who always makes plans, who always checks in, who always cares more. Match energy. Don't exceed it. Let people wonder about you. Let them feel the absence of your constant attention. Let them worry that maybe you're not as invested as they thought. And watch the dynamic shift. Watch them start pursuing. Watch them start valuing. Watch them start respecting. Because you've rebalanced the equation. You've stopped being the one who needs more. And the moment that happens, you stop being the one who's controlled. If this rule landed, type, "I'm not chasing anymore." Rule number 11. Walk away from anything that requires you to beg. If you have to beg for it, it's already gone. The relationship, the job, the respect, the opportunity. If you're on your knees pleading for something that should be freely given, you've already lost it. And the longer you beg, the more you confirm that you never deserved it in the first place. Because people don't withhold value from those they value. They withhold it from those they're testing. And if you keep begging, you keep failing the test. Begging is the final death of respect. It's the moment you admit that the other person's validation is more important than your dignity, that their approval is worth your humiliation, that you'll sacrifice everything, your pride, your boundaries, your self-worth, just to keep them in your life. And they see it, they feel it, and it repulses them. Not because they're evil, but because desperation is repulsive. It's the opposite of power. It's the opposite of value. It's the opposite of everything humans are wired to respect. Think about the last time you begged. Begged someone to stay. Begged someone to choose you. Begged someone to see your worth. What happened? Did it work? Did they suddenly realize your value and treat you better? Or did they pull further away, disgusted by the display, more convinced than ever that they were right to devalue you? It's always the latter, because begging doesn't inspire reconsideration. It inspires contempt. It confirms every negative assumption they had about you. It proves that you don't believe in your own worth, and if you don't believe it, why should they? This is where most people stay stuck for years. They keep trying to convince someone who's already decided. They keep explaining, justifying, proving, chasing. They keep lowering their standards, accepting less, tolerating disrespect, all because they're terrified of walking away. Terrified that if they leave, they'll never find anything better. Terrified that they're not worthy of more. So they beg, and they stay, and they slowly die inside while calling it love, loyalty, commitment. But it's not. It's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of facing the truth that they've wasted time on someone who never valued them. The rule is absolute. The moment you have to beg, you walk. No explanation. No second chances. No hoping they'll change. You walk. Because anyone who makes you beg for basic respect, basic decency, basic reciprocity is telling you exactly who they are. They're telling you that your value is conditional, that your worth is negotiable, that you're an option, not a priority. And you don't negotiate with that. You don't try to change that. You accept it as information, and you leave. Machiavelli's most brutal truth. Men ought either to be well treated or crushed because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries, or more serious ones they cannot. The injury from begging is serious. It crushes your spirit. It destroys your self-respect. And you cannot recover from it while you're still in the situation that requires it. You have to leave. You have to walk away. You have to choose yourself even when it terrifies you. Because staying is not loyalty. Staying is self-betrayal. The next time you feel the urge to beg to convince someone of your worth, to plead for their attention, to chase someone who's walking away, stop. Recognize what's happening. Recognize that you're about to trade your dignity for a relationship that's already over. And choose differently. Let them go. Let them see what life looks like without you. Let them experience the consequence of losing someone who was willing to fight for them. And you walk into the unknown with your self-respect intact, because that's all you really have. That's all you really need. If this hits your core, type, "I'm done begging." Rule number 12. Become someone people calculate around, not someone people calculate on. This is the final transformation. The shift from being a resource to being a force. Most people spend their entire lives being calculated on. They're predictable, reliable, safe. People know exactly what they'll tolerate, exactly how they'll react, exactly what they'll accept. So, people use them. Not because they're bad people, but because they're convenient, because they're low risk, because you can take from them without consequence. And that's not respect, that's exploitation. The people who command respect are different. They're variables, not constants. You can't predict them, you can't control them, you can't take from them without cost. So people calculate around them. They consider them before they act. They weigh their words before they speak. They think twice before they disrespect, ignore, or undervalue. Not out of fear, out of awareness. Awareness that this person is not someone you can afford to lose, not someone you can afford to anger, not someone you can take for granted. This is the shift that changes everything. When you stop being someone people expect to tolerate their behavior, and you become someone people hope doesn't notice their behavior. When you stop being someone people call when they need something, and you become someone people are grateful even for answers. When you stop being the backup plan, the safe option, the guaranteed yes, and you become the wild card, the high-value decision, the uncertain outcome. That's when respect becomes automatic. That's when people stop testing you. That's when you stop being managed and start being revered. But this transformation requires something most people never develop: the willingness to be misunderstood, disliked, and alone. Because when you stop being predictable, people get uncomfortable. When you stop saying yes, people get angry. When you start prioritizing yourself, people call you selfish. And if you're still addicted to approval, you'll fold. You'll go back to being convenient. You'll go back to being safe. You'll go back to being invisible. But if you can withstand the discomfort, if you can hold your boundaries while people test them, if you can stay consistent while people try to pull you back, you'll cross a threshold most people never reach. You'll become someone people respect, not because they want to, but because they have to. Think about the people in your life who have this quality. The people who don't chase, don't explain, don't compromise themselves for acceptance. The people who will walk away mid-conversation if disrespected. The people who make you work to keep them in your life. Do you respect them? Do you calculate around them? Do you think twice before crossing them? Of course you do, because they've demonstrated that they value themselves more than they value your comfort. And that demonstration is magnetic, it's powerful, it's rare. Now become that person. Stop tolerating disrespect to keep the peace. Stop being available to people who don't value you. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't matter. Stop sacrificing your standards for other people's comfort. Become unpredictable. Become unavailable. Become someone whose respect is earned, not assumed. Become someone whose presence is a privilege, not a right. Become someone who people calculate around, not on. Machiavelli's final wisdom: the wise man does at once what the fool does finally. The fool spends decades trying to earn respect through service, through sacrifice, through being useful. And finally, broken and exhausted, they realize none of it worked. They realize they were being used, not valued. And only then do they start respecting themselves. The wise man does it immediately. He sets the standard from day one. He refuses to be disrespected from the first offense. He walks away from anything that doesn't serve him without hesitation. And because of that, he spends his life surrounded by respect instead of begging for it. You've spent enough time being the person people calculate on, the person they lean on without supporting, the person they take from without giving, the person they disrespect without consequence. It's time to become someone different, someone dangerous, someone valuable, someone rare. Some people calculate around because they know that losing you is not an option they can afford. If this entire script rewired your reality, type, "I'm done being predictable." You're not the same person who started watching this video. You can feel it. The rules you just heard aren't theory. They're architecture. They're the psychological framework every man who commands respect operates from. And now you have it. Now you see the game. Now you understand why people treated you the way they did. It wasn't random. It wasn't personal. It was predictable. Because you were predictable. But that ends today. Today, you stop explaining yourself to people who don't matter. You stop chasing respect from people who don't give it. You stop tolerating behavior you would never accept from yourself. You stop being the person everyone calculates on, and you become the person everyone calculates around. Not because you're cruel, but because you're sovereign. Because you've chosen self-respect over approval. And that choice makes you untouchable. They didn't ignore you because they didn't hear you. They ignored you because they didn't fear losing you. Now make them fear it. Comment on the role you're applying first. Save this video. Share it with someone who needs to wake up. And remember, silence is more powerful than any words you were taught to say.